Good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Robert Nirenberg. I'm one of the co-PIs here for the BAS Center. Let's go ahead and start with some introductions, though I'm going to warn you, it does look like this discussion session might go a little bit differently than we had initially planned. But Marco, you want to start us off?
Sure. Marco Pitoni, Lawrence Berkeley Lab. I'm a scientist. I work on controls in different applications. I am very familiar with implementation of BAS in real buildings and campuses. We also work on advanced controls that rely on building automation or use building automation. I'm very curious about the results of the hands-on tests because I wasn't there, I haven't seen it, so I'm here for that reason. Thank you.
Madeline?
Hi, I'm a freelance writer. I write quite a bit about the AT projects and centers. I'm working currently with the AT Central project on AT Impacts publication. I write a monthly blog for AT Central. So I'm attending the conference sessions today or the Institute sessions to just gather some information for a blog that I plan to write and post on Monday. So I was curious, I've talked to Larry in the past and Peter about your summer workshop. So I was just interested to pick up a tidbit or two here that might make it into the article. We'll see. It's an evolving piece. So I may drop out at some point and attend TED session as well.
Makes perfect sense. Welcome and thank you for coming.
Okay, thanks.
Steve?
My name's Steve Brown. I'm a chief engineer out in Denver, Colorado for a large downtown commercial building. And basically like to specialize in BAS programming and control optimization for the building.
Fantastic. Welcome. We'll let Levi here get connected. Good afternoon, Levi. Would you care to introduce yourself, please? Sorry to put you on the spot. All right. Well, as I said, my name's Robert Nirenberg, co-PI. I was a HVAC instructor for about 6 years, also teaching building automation systems. And I've been the ringleader for our summer workshops for a handful of years now. This last year, in summer of 2023, we held our annual workshop in Omaha, Nebraska at Metropolitan Community College, which is the college where I formerly taught at. And as part of our presentations, or as our activity for that workshop, we had a number of different hands-on activities oriented towards troubleshooting BAS systems, controlling HVAC, so climate control systems, if you would like to narrow it in on a topic. But for the first time, we really emphasized that the participants needed to do something for us. Every year we make them do or ask them to do some ending surveys and some report outs on the statistics of their programs, of their colleges. This year we kind of turned it on its head a little bit and gave them almost a full day to write up some lesson plans oriented towards lab activities that they could execute that maybe they were related to what we had done in the lab or inspired by what we had done in the labs earlier that week. But we really wanted them to have something to take home. And on the last day, everybody reported out on those lesson plans and lab plans that they had put together. and shared what their ideas were, kind of as an open forum for suggestions for further evolution, discussion about what problems, what challenges they faced with them. So that's what we did as the end of our workshop. It was very well received. And this particular session was supposed to be folks coming in to talk about how they had implemented those plans, how those plans had evolved over the last 6 or 8 months. So unfortunately, we don't have anybody besides myself who was at that workshop. So I'm not sure what we can do for that. So I'm open to suggestions on how we can make this productive for you folks who are here.
From my point of view, I am very curious about sort of what practitioners need and want, and then they ask for. So what kind of the discussion was from them, because I often see very complex systems and very, highly skilled people in a very a bubble, and I really want to have like a real sense of what's out there and how people react and what they want.
Fair enough. We can definitely talk about that. Steve, was there anything specific you wanted to, or any ideas you'd like to discuss?
Basically, I was just interested in, I've seen some of the workshop videos, and I was kind of interested in hearing some of that. I'm always looking for ways to optimize. I've got a relatively complex system at my building, and I'm always looking at ways to come up with reducing my EUI. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I know I'm kind of stuck in my control system because a lot of my controllers are with canned programs. So there's not a lot I can do with those. Some of them are obsolete. Some of them are definitely rogue and problematic. So I'm always looking for ways to do better fault detection.
Fantastic.
I was interested, and maybe it's just I haven't looked at your website for a while, if the lesson plans that people came up with are shared on your website, or if it was something we could direct people to, or if it's something you're uploading to AT Central that we could direct readers to. So just if there is, maybe you could throw it in the chat, or I'm happy to provide my email and you could email it to me or just direct me to it. So that's kind of what I was looking for.
That would actually be a better question for Larry. He's more in touch with what we're posting on the website and what we're not. It is a great question. And I know that we do share those, but I'm not exactly sure how we are currently doing that. Levi, any specific items you'd like to discuss as part of this? I'm just trying to get everything put together so maybe we can do multiple things at once. All right, if you think of anything, Levi, feel free to toss it into the chat. All right, so trying to think how we can put Marco's question and Steve's question a little bit together here. So Steve, one of the things that your question is not at all uncommon. We get in the educational field, and Marco in particular in the lab field, I'm sure, gets all kinds of questions from building operators, building owners. How can we be more efficient? How can we reduce our EUI or our overall expenses, or whatever given metric that their system or their bosses want to see? So that it is a universal question. And I'm sure you know, running a building, that one of the biggest challenges we face, or I'm curious if you're seeing it as well, is lack of time or lack of hands to do the work.
Both. And I also see a severe lack of new engineers coming on board that have the base knowledge or unfortunately even want to learn it.
I can definitely identify with that. And that brings in exactly what Marco was asking about, what the instructors are looking for in classrooms. And the first thing we have, the traditional HVAC classes, folks who are looking to go install residential and commercial air conditioning systems and furnaces, rooftop units, even commercial refrigeration systems. Most of those programs, if they have instructors that care and are willing to try, those programs flourish. The programs that are more oriented towards training folks like stationary engineers, building operators, and controls technicians, for some reason, it's one of those where we have to scrabble tooth and nail to try and get candidates in the door. And at least part of that, we believe, is because of lack of knowledge of the industry. If you think back to when you were in school, how many, or did you think about these job positions that people actually have to take care of the systems of, especially large commercial buildings? You might think of the maintenance staff more in a janitorial aspect or more of an accounting aspect, but the people who actually take care of the systems, not counting contractors, are almost an unseen source. And even people in our trades industries, a lot of them don't even know about building controls to begin with, that it exists as a career field. So those are some really solid challenges and not ones that we have good answers for. There are a lot of different initiatives around the country trying to improve that, to get enrollment up in those programs, to get people applying for those type of jobs, interested in those type of jobs. I think there's definitely some work in the STEM and STEAM pipelines to help with that. But a lot of those end up pushing more towards a traditional engineering job, architecture type. So it's not entirely a great fit, but we're trying to get there. There are some programs that are using building controls programming as an accessibility tool to teach IT, which is really an interesting way to go around it. And a lot of folks think it's kind of a dangerous thing in some ways, because you're taking a computer programmer and saying, here, control the building, when they may not understand the underlying or even know about the underlying principles that we're using to control it. And the limitations of the equipment. And, if you do something that breaks the equipment, it's a real world repair that has to happen, not just something that you can type away and fix. So those are some of those challenges that are coming in. But your comment specifically about fundamentals, the folks who are applying for these jobs not knowing really anything or very, very little about the industry. And that's what most of our instructors, Marco, are trying to drive home, is those fundamentals. So while oftentimes real building systems, especially large buildings like large schools, hospitals, high-rise buildings, lab and test facilities, those are exceptionally complex systems. Most of the systems that we want to see as a classroom or in a lab are much more basics focused. You know, basic things like actually even just digital control. Can we control a rooftop unit? Can we control a VAV box? That's been one of my soapbox items as far as what people should include in their lab to teach on is VAV systems. Because you can simulate, you can teach digital control systems on commercial rooftop units. You can even use residential systems if you need to be able to teach the principles of digital control. But when you start getting into your analog control systems, a VAV box is an amazing opportunity because it's a complex system that you have multiple analog systems that you can control and force to interact. But it's an exceptionally cost-effective item to add to your labs. The supply system for it, you know, typically an air handler, may be a little bit more expensive to add. But, you know, if you can throw a couple, you know, half a dozen VAV boxes onto a single air handler, and it can be very, very inexpensive, especially if you can use it as a project for students in other parts of, especially an HVAC-based program, can do a lot of the duct work for you, can do a lot of the install work. If you have classes oriented towards fitting, maybe you can do something with hot water and chilled water there. But with that, with the air handler, you don't even necessarily need that. You can adapt a VAV box or two on the discharge of a residential furnace. If that's what you need to do to feed it air, that's really what you need, is the ability to feed it air. And past that, there's a lot you can do with it. It's an amazing teaching tool. So
I'm looking this from the other perspective. I work with a lot of campuses here in California, and some of the kind of story I've heard, and we kind of wrote a proposal actually to address that, is that they don't have enough qualified people. I mean, they have positions for energy managers. They're posted for a year, and nobody applies. Which is kind of shocking. And so I'm kind of wondering if this is a result of maybe these jobs, you know, if you have that level of skills, you go in the IT industry that maybe pays more, or what could be done to kind of bridge that gap. And because you have the perspective of the teachers, I kind of wanted to see if you guys had some insights on what's going on the other side.
That's a really great question, and not what I would consider a unique question, weirdly, because the problem you're seeing with energy managers, we're seeing in a number of the higher end sustainability fields and educational fields. So I think one of the big challenges is to getting people into those positions or to apply to those positions initially is an equity gap. You know, just plain and simple. If you have skill set X, and you've got the option of going to work for a company as an energy manager at $80,000, or you've got the same skill set, and you could go work for a contractor for $100,000 or $120,000 a year. It's a really challenging to justify to yourself going to take that lower paying job. There are, of course, things that are less obvious benefits towards, you know, a more long-term job like a sustainability or energy manager, but it's one of those things where you got to get them in the door first.
Yeah, one of the things I notice it's like for the building I'm at, it can take years to truly understand the operation, the sequence of operation. And then once you have that, then you need to think about what can I do? How can I change it to make it better? And I find bringing in outside vendors, it's very difficult because they might know how to program, but they absolutely don't know the building or the equipment.
Nope.
And so you almost have to feed them what you want. And it's a constant battle.
Absolutely. You have almost two completely different skill sets or stacks of information that it's very, very hard to get into a single person. And like you said, especially from a contractor standpoint, they're all time oriented, time and materials. So if you paid them to be there for 4 hours, they're going to be there for 4 hours. But that's it. And you're going to have to go back, you know, and may have to finish what they're doing or go back to your boss and beg for more time. So yeah, that's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, because if you pay for them for 4 hours and you're just telling them for 2 of those hours what equipment's at the building, you really don't even get 4 hours of work.
No, that's a fact. I've been in exactly that position on both sides of that fence. I originally was a controls contractor, and then was a energy management coordinator for a school, now then a teacher. So yes, it's amazingly challenging on both sides because everybody cares. They want to do a good job. They want to help, but it's a little bit challenging. And we're going to pause for just a second. Hey, Larry, Madeline had a great question related to how we are sharing the lesson plans that we gathered from the summer workshop. Are those up on the website, or are we just doing it through the YouTube videos?
In the past, I think that we've typically placed them in our Google Drive, and then, you know, we've just distributed the link that way, but we can certainly look at disseminating through the website as well. That probably will take a little bit more time, but at the very least, that's how we kind of at least get the ball rolling through the Google Drive.
Okay, so Levi is also a stationary engineer and had no idea about the career field before a friend got into it. Has now been out of school for 8 years went to school, 8 years ago, but now in the field. And, you know, the challenges of dealing with an existing building. Steve, you mentioned that you have some controllers that are obsolete. Sometimes we run into control systems. About a year ago, I was working on a medical office building, actually in your area, Steve, in Denver, that had been out of the ground for, I think it was about 18 years, 19 years. And we did a full control audit. We put our eyes on every controller, building controller in that building. And it wasn't an amazingly large building, 200,000 square feet, 4 stories, 5 stories, something like that. And even though it had only been around for 18 years, we found 6 or 7 different, completely different controls manufacturers present in that building, and at least 4 different generations of controls for one of the manufacturers. It's very, very common especially when you get into larger commercial buildings. You know, as soon as you start doing remodel projects, you know, you may not have the same control system throughout. And if you get into older buildings, dealing with pneumatics as well is just a whole nother ball game. and where a lot of our traditional educational programs for these, and I'm actually going to even point to a lot of the mechanical engineering programs, is you get so little hands-on time with systems like that, that it becomes very, very hard to really pick up and understand it until you're in the field dealing with it. And that is definitely one of the things that BEST and our constituent colleges is working to alleviate. I'm a kinesthetic learner. I learn with my hands. If I can put my hands on it and do it, I can pick it up a lot faster than any other way. And, you know, it's one of those things where we are pushing these colleges to build labs, to reach out to students in the way they need to learn, both kinesthetics and other learning methodologies that you need to adapt as a teacher.
Yeah, I don't know if this question's been covered, but I'll throw it out to Levi. And I know Levi attended our pilot high performance building operations professional training. And it was at least maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And Steve, are you a faculty member or stationary engineer?
Basically a chief engineer at the building. I've applied, I've actually taken the exam. So at some point I'll find out how
Thank you
that
very
works
much.
out.
Right. Yes, I recognize your name. You're in Denver, correct?
I
Right.
am.
Yeah. So how much kind of training is provided by the controls installers? Right. So you make an upgrade. Robert's smiling. So I guess I know where this answer or where this question will go. But you know, I'd say that that's probably like the first line of defense, right? Oh, well, okay, go to the installer and see what kind of training they can provide, or at least refer you to.
It's getting harder right now. If I don't tend to travel, so I don't travel to the manufacturer. I've had the opportunity to have the manufacturer put on a training within my building, and that was good. But my controls provider, they're having labor issues as well. So they're so inundated with work that I'm barely able to get them to do the work I need them to do, let alone teach me.
Mm.
So, I mean, at this point, I am trying to learn more and more. It just seems like I'm being stretched thinner and thinner. And, you know, Robert, like you said, you just can't find the time. So, you know, not only am I doing the mechanical side, I also do the electrical side. And, you know, the biggest project I'm working on right now is you can't control what you don't measure. And so I'm trying to come through my facility and actually sub-meter all of my sub panels so that I know where my electricity is going. You know, everybody says, you know, make the HVAC more efficient, streamline it, optimize it. But the tenants of the building are a huge component. And I need to know what they're doing, let alone just what the building's doing.
Yep. And how can you measure the success of making changes to your HVAC system if you can't attribute energy savings specifically within that realm? Absolutely.
And so one of the biggest struggles I have is, you know, I'll use third party to do energy audits, you know, phase 1, phase 2 energy audits, and they'll say that, you know, my optimal start sequencing is not good. but they don't know the building, and they come in, they're here 2-3 days, and they start making this. And then where I get frustrated is the canned programming that the manufacturers use for optimal start doesn't work. And so you almost have to go with a custom program, and I'm not the programmer. So it's kind of, it just, you chase your tail.
Absolutely. Can I ask a quick question? You had mentioned that some of your controls, what control system are you running, if I may ask?
I have Niagara 4 with Distech controls.
Okay. Does your contractor, your controls contractor start with an L by any chance?
No,
Okay.
starts with an E.
Not familiar with them.
Okay.
So, yeah, that is a challenge. I applaud you for adding the metering. We are seeing a lot of larger organizations, if they haven't already implemented metering as part of another project, adding metering, excuse me. So I absolutely agree. That is without a doubt one of the best first steps you can make.
Yeah. I mean, one downside is, some of the things were started prior to me being here. I'm in a 42-year-old building, and I would say DDC came in roughly 1995. And at the time, they decided to go with lawn as a backbone. I have since had to basically maintain some of the lawn, but I've gone Ethernet and BACnet moving forward. So I still have a lot of old legacy lawn controllers out there that slowly I'll have to retrofit and get out of the building.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's tough. I mean, like you said, trying to get people to look at it. I probably have close to 1,000 VAV boxes, and I can't even afford to have an engineer try to visit each box every day. There's just not enough time. So fault detection becomes really important, so that let the computer try to figure out, hey, these are, let's say, the 5 boxes you need to take a look at today to figure out why they're not doing what they should be doing.
Yeah, let the engineers do repairs instead of diagnostics. Well,
Right.
To an extent, at least.
Right.
Letting the building tell them where the problem is versus going to find the problem.
Yeah, because if you look at 25 perfect boxes and then you find one bad box, I mean, you spent all that time looking at things that are fine when you need to concentrate on what's not good.
And I'm going to bounce back to Larry's question here about training from a contractor to owner's perspective. From my experience, what often happens when a new building is constructed or a significant remodel happens is the engineer and architect will specify a certain number of training hours that the control contractor is going to give to the building operator and their staff.
Right.
So this is often something that Steve, as the chief engineer, would attend, and whoever is available from his engineering staff. Oftentimes it's hard to get all of the engineers that may be present there for the training because, hey, somebody's still got to be running the building, right? And oftentimes that training orients towards, here is the graphics for the new system. It's the same controllers you're used to, or it's a new control system that we're just going to barely touch on what it can do. Mostly it's here's your new system. The mechanical guy is going to go through and teach you where to lube the bearings and what kind of grease to use and how often you need to drain your traps. The control guy is going to talk about the sequence of operation, maybe, and show you the graphics and show you how to get around the system. One of the challenges with this, especially with new buildings, is the people who are in these trainings have maybe had a couple of weeks or a month to look at the building. So they have almost no idea, no real practical grasp on what's happening. And so they go through the training. Oftentimes it's recorded by the general contractors now, so that they can be referenced back. I don't think I've ever seen anybody actually reference back to those recordings, but hey, they still do them anyway. And when you get into a problem, you call the contractor that you did, and maybe you get some help from them. With the control contractor, or with any of them, once it's out of warranty, they'll happily come and fix it for you or show you what you need to do, but you're going to be paying their $200 an hour to do it. As far as what training the manufacturers offer from a control standpoint, yeah, most contractors will charge you a fee and send you to the manufacturer training. Like Steve said, you've got to frequently travel to their facilities, but even that, they're showing you how to use their software. They're showing you how to use their hardware. They're not teaching you diddly about how the contractor implemented that in your building. So it can be of limited value depending on the person who you're sending to it. But I just wanted to get that on the record.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I mean, it's been a couple of years since I discovered the BEST Institute, and I was kind of, I've looked at some of the colleges that kind of are suggested for programmings, and I've looked at some of the curriculums. There are a lot of courses out there I'd love to take, but it's like, I can't get to Berkeley, if the class is actually there, or if it goes on for weeks, one day a week, how can somebody like in Denver get that knowledge from that course, unless it's online?
Right.
And that leads us to a spring controls training opportunity. Robert, have you spoken about that?
No, I was just about to go into it.
Okay, there you go. There you go. I'm going to move to one of the other round tables, but
Thanks for
nice to
stepping
meet
in,
you
Larry.
all. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Larry.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So, as Larry intimated, we are working on some controls training in conjunction with Lawrence Berkeley National Lab to do a hybrid online and in-person training, specifically oriented towards building operators. And it is being funded, I believe, by DOE. But we are doing 2 different cohorts coming this spring. The first is going to be a management cohort, which is going to be, I believe, 4 weeks of training, all online, kind of Zoom meeting type orientation for most of it. But we do have remote access to some systems at Lawrence Berkeley's Flex Lab. So it's going to be real data that we're monitoring and adjustments that we're making in a safe environment. So
what would you consider the idea of the course? You just said it was a management course?
No, it is building operations, but it is directed at managers.
Okay.
So we're dealing with a lot of topics from basic level, looking at energy efficiency, Grid Interactive Intelligent Buildings, GEB. And, you know, doing even down to some medium topics like PID loop tuning. The management get much more the kind of high level perspective on it, those topics, but we're also following that up directly, I think like 2 weeks after the manager's training ends or cohort ends. We're doing one more for boots on the ground engineers. So stationary engineers, building operators, whatever the term is in your area. And that one is a longer course session, much more in-depth into the nitty-gritty. That session or cohort has 2 different in-person sessions in Berkeley, but they're limited, specifically to keep them more flexible for people to be able to get to.
Okay.
But again, that one's, let's see, the the manager cohort is starts mid-April and goes into March, I believe. No, starts mid-March, goes into April. Sorry, had the calendar reversed. And then the operators starts at the end of April and goes with a short break to the second week of June. So
Okay.
we would be very interested in both Steve, you and you, Levi. If it's something you'd be interested in, reach out and we will, once we have the flyers set up for it, we'll definitely get them to you.
Yeah, I was going to say if you can get a syllabus at some point, that'd be good to see.
Yeah. And Levi, you're absolutely right. One of the challenges, and I alluded to this back when Steve mentioned, or Marco mentioned, sorry, energy coordinators and how it's kind of hard to get people to apply to those jobs. We're having exactly the same issue in the educational fields, especially when it comes to controls. In the past year and a half, 2 years, the BAS Center itself has even seen schools lose. I think we've lost 6 or 8. No, we've lost 8 of our longtime instructors. 3 of them or 4 of them retired, and 4 of us moved back to industry, including myself, actually. So it is a real challenge getting folks to take the time to come in out of the field to do this training, because, you know, it's back to there's only so many hours in the day. And if you're driving the wheels off your service van at work, you know, you don't necessarily want to come into a school for 4 hours on a night when you could be spending it with your family, with your kids, you know, watching a football game, whatever you do.
Right.
It's really hard.
Yeah, it's like once you're done with your apprenticeship, you're done.
Right.
Yeah.
So it is an absolute challenge. And a lot of times because we are working through colleges, educational systems, you know, they have their own processes, their own requirements. And in some cases, you know, you may have people who do want to come teach, but these are trades folks. Maybe they've got an associate degree, maybe they've got a bachelor degree, but at some institutions, you have to have at least a master's degree to show up and teach. And they don't take into account trade experience. You know, you may hold a master's license, but because it's not a master's degree,
Right.
you can't show up and teach. So that really can cause some significant problems. And you end up either having a total lack of teachers, or you have an instructor who may be a great teacher, but isn't exactly comfortable with that topic or doesn't have a lot of real world experience with that topic. So you get kind of, not the best that could happen out of it. And that's one of those things that we're working to fight with. So,
Yeah, I can see that.
but yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Levi. Moving in and becoming an independent contractor, consultant type person, there is more work out there than can be done by the current folks that are doing the work, both in running buildings and dealing with the contractor side as well. It's, Steve's example of, he'd pay people if they'd show up. It's one of those things. It's challenging.
Yeah, right now we're trying to work with a local community college with an apprenticeship program. And, it's still, 18-month investment. And he works at the building 20 hours a week. And that's really the only place he can get the hands-on to help him advance. Because here in Denver, I would say, especially downtown Denver, about 60 to 70% of the chief engineers are at retirement age.
I'm not even remotely surprised to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm really
all the
glad
big
to
cities
hear.
are that way.
Well, you don't even have to be a big city to be that way. If you look at the statistics, I haven't seen a study for about 5 years, 6 years. But in, 2016 was the last employment report, that over 60%, I think it was 62 or 63% of the incumbent workforce in the HVAC trades. So that includes residential, light commercial, building operations, and controls, that over 60% were going to be ready to retire within the next 6 or 10 years. That was 2016 data. That was 7 years ago, coming up on 8 years ago now.
Yeah.
That means we've got 2 years left, and we're not bringing enough people out of school into those fields. There are a lot of reasons behind it, but it's
Yeah.
we're far from the only ones dealing with that. The electrical trades, general construction, they're all staring down the barrel of that same problem. We're all trying to solve it, just having trouble getting traction. But
All right.
somebody will either figure it out, or we're going to get in a world of hurt, and then somebody's going to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, it's been an interesting session. I want to thank you.
Thank you for attending, Steve. It's a pleasure to meet you.
And I'll keep poking around BAS and looking at what they have to offer. Look forward to seeing your syllabus come out and see if that can work.
Absolutely. We'll make sure we get you a copy of it. Levi, we'll definitely get you a copy as well. So keep an eye out for that. Since you were part of the original HPBOP pilot, we should still have your contact info. If not, if you could reach out to Larry, his contact info is the same as it's always been. But if you could reach out to him, we'll definitely get you that flyer as well. And you can attend in person because you're already in the area, which is perfect. And I'm going to get back to Marco finally. I'm gesturing to his icon on my screen. I doubt it's in the same place for you folks, but. Marco, did we successfully answer your any of your questions there? I'm not sure we did, but. And I'll actually introduce Stan here real quick. He's just getting on, but Stan Harrell is actually my old boss when I was energy management coordinator. So he is with Metropolitan Community College in Omaha, Nebraska. What's your current title, Stan?
Director of campus planning.
Still, okay.
Yeah, this is, I'm sorry I didn't get to catch your show here. I've attended everything I could today, but other duties as assigned. You know how that goes.
We do. We were just wrapping up. So anybody have any final questions?
Nope.
All right.
Well, Robert, thank you. I'll be bowing out.
Pleasure, Steve. We'll see you tomorrow.